All right, American pastors reportedly experiencing the same electoral pressure as their congregants and the general public, with many faith leaders reluctant now to reveal who they plan to vote for in November. And with the current government regime that likes to prosecute anyone or persecute anyone who disagrees with their views and, slam them, shut them down, invade their social media and so on and so forth, I guess I understand people hiding from these thugs. This issue of election silence, however, is much more pronounced among preachers in 2024, it seems, with 23% of pastors refusing to answer who they'll cast a ballot for come November or before. For context, just 4% expressed the same reluctance in 2020. 3% fell into that bucket in 2016. I mean, that's remarkable. Despite many declining to share, it seems that 50% of pastors say they plan to vote for Donald Trump. 96% of those pastors say protecting religious freedom is important when they consider who to vote for. Here with me to discuss this is the president of Summit Ministries, Dr. Jeff Myers. He's sitting right on the edge of heaven, from what I understand. That he described it in the break, so that's nice. That's where he's coming to us from. That's why he has the halo around him. Jeff, on a serious note, I mean, these people are afraid, and there's the reason I think they're afraid to say something. Nonprofit status has been threatened by the people in Washington right now, and I'm not talking about the Republicans, of course, by the Democrats. They have threatened nonprofit status of churches and religious organizations, and that's a pretty big threat out there for these people, isn't it?
It is a big threat, and I think it's an interesting theory, but the pastors I've talked to tell me that the threats just seems a lot closer to home. 2/3 of people in their congregation say they want them to talk about current issues and voting and so forth, but 1/3 don't. And that 1/3, those are noisy people, and they can make your life miserable if you're a small town pastor. Big town pastors, I think it's an issue of popularity. If they announce who they're going to vote for, they think they'll lose people from their congregation. So they're in a tough spot. But listen, people are bad citizens. A lot of Christians are very bad citizens. They don't even bother to vote. And if you're a pastor and you don't address bad citizenship and expect them to be good citizens, it's sort of like a parent not addressing sexuality and expecting their kids to never discover pornography.
Yeah. It seems to me that certain churches have no fear at all about standing in the pulpit and saying, here's how you got to vote. Some churches have no fear at all and don't care if 1/3 of their attendees are upset or the people in their flock are upset. They don't care. What do you make of it? Is there a right answer here?
Well, I think the right answer is, now listen, I run a Christian ministry, Summit Ministries. We put out videos on this kind of thing. We have a course called Should Christians Avoid Politics? So we address it, but we start with the foundation. It does. If you believe in God, that will change what you understand about the nature of reality, which changes what you understand about right and wrong, and then politics and sociology and economics and everything else. So if you build the foundation properly, you can help your congregants understand a vote is not a like. A vote is a hiring decision. What is the proper role of government up against the role of the family and the church? And we're not talking about someone to, one ring to rule them all. We're talking about who we're going to hire to run that particular government unit. That takes a lot of the fear out of it for most people.
Wasn't Jesus a bit of a politician? I mean, when you go in and yell at the priests or take on the money changers or whatever, isn't that political in nature? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, Jeff, but it seems to me that's pretty political. When you go and try to overturn the entire system, that's pretty political.
Well, Jesus dealt with factions all during his ministry. I talk about that in this new course, which people can get if they want. Just summit.org/politics. I talk specifically about the factions Jesus faced and how he handled them. He was a kind man, but he was not weak. And there's a big difference. And if you think that kindness, trying to be kind to people who will disagree with you, means never taking a stand on something, you're misunderstanding what it means to be an American as well as what it means to be a Christian.
He was kind. You're no question about that. He would heal the sick. But he was also blunt and very direct about what was wrong and what was wrong with the entire system, which is why he came in and turned it on its head. I mean, talk about a brutal politician.
That's the thing. From Jesus' perspective, there's no conflict there. You can be kind
Right.
and direct and straightforward at the same time. Why is that such a big deal?
I think we need more courage in the pulpit. That's what I get out of this conversation, Doctor. We need more courage for people to say, look, you don't have to agree with me, but my convictions lead me to believe that I can't support a regime that thinks abortion up to the moment of birth is an acceptable moral standing. It's not. It's not to millions of us. We know that. Having children brutalized, medically and with hormonal drugs, that's not something that's morally sound. We know that. And I think people have to have more courage in the pulpit. I'll give you, that's me. I'm not in the business that you are, but that's me as a average American. I'll give you the last word.
No, I think you're exactly right. People do look up to their pastors and trust what they say. And if they just give their opinion, that's fine. But I think some pastors say, we're not going to talk about anything tough because we want unity. Well, is that what you do in marriage? You want unity in your marriage, but that doesn't mean you never bring up anything tough. Unity is when you communicate about the difficult things with grace and that you still bring up the difficult things. That's my last word.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It's not always an easy conversation, but these conversations do have to be had. That's the way we work around here. Dr. Jeff Myers, always appreciate your input, sir. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Now, when we come back, more America's Voice Live. And don't forget to tune in Thursday, 8 o'clock Eastern, for an evening with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. right here in Real America's Voice. We'll be talking about making America healthy again, his new big push, as he has joined the Trump campaign and he is traveling the country talking to people in important states